Hi guys. You know, we've got so much to be thankful to God for this beautiful universe. I'm sitting outside in the back veranda here on a beautiful sunny day and it's just gorgeous. Sometimes we need to remember to thank God for His beautiful creation. Part of that creation, of course, is us. God created human beings, not just created them as just nice little animals running around on the earth, but He created us in His image and likeness. And that's so important. And that gives us a certain dignity. We have a dignity because we're human beings. We have that little bit of God in us. We resemble God in a special way. And so that dignity has to be respected. That's why we need to respect ourselves and other people. And that's why we need to be just. It's where the word justice really comes from. Being fair with others, because we respect them because they're made in the image and likeness of God. Unfortunately, we human beings, we don't always like to play fair. We sometimes want to use other people, exploit other people, and they've done that throughout the ages, throughout history. To get on top in the world, to get richer, more powerful, you've got to push someone else down in order to get up there. And some people, for many people around the world throughout history, they didn't care about anybody else. They didn't care about what was fair or just for another person. For some people, they had slaves in the past. They didn't even think that other human beings were worth living. And they didn't care if they were poor, sick, starving. They didn't care about anyone else. They only cared about themselves. And then, unfortunately, the world was a very cruel and cold place. And God didn't want this because He created human beings in His image so that they can thrive. And He's given us enough in our world to give us the basics, like enough to eat, some shelter. We've got rights like to worship God, to have freedom, all these things which are basically human rights. God's given us all these things, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't get to enjoy those rights because other people push them down or don't care about them and they slip through the cracks. And so we've got a lot of poor, disadvantaged, vulnerable people that are exploited even today. So God does not want us to be part of that. He wants us to be part of the solution, to bring people back to the knowledge that they are loved by God and they have dignity. So we have to be God's hands, if you like, and feet, head in the world doing this. So that's the basis of social justice. But when Jesus came along, He took it to another level. Because what Jesus taught us was that not only is it good, we're doing something good for God by looking after other people and reaching out to the poor and the vulnerable and sticking up for those that have no voice, but He said, if you do that, you encounter me. And there's a lovely story of a young boy, 10 years of age, by the name of Martin. And Martin was not Christian, and his parents were not Christian, didn't believe in God. And he was in ancient Rome. And at 10, he heard about Christ and the gospel. He decided to become a Christian, even though the rest of his family wasn't. No one else he knew was. He heard about it and he decided to be a Christian. And later on in life, he joined the army because his dad was an officer in the Roman army. He joined the Roman army. He became an officer in the Roman army as well, in the Emperor's Guard. He was still a Christian. And as he was leading his soldiers down the road one winter, icy road, he was thinking about Christ and his Christian religion and God, and thinking about those people that are less fortunate than himself, and just wondering about what it all means. Why are people poor if God loves everyone so much? Why are people sick? Why are they homeless, etc., etc.? Anyway, as he's riding along, he saw a beggar in the snow at the side of the road, and others just rode by. The poor beggar was freezing, hadn't got much to wear at all. And he looked at that beggar and he was moved with compassion. He said, well, that's not right. I can do something. So he got down off his horse and with his sword, had a beautiful purple cloak. And he cut the cloak in half and wrapped half the cloak around the poor beggar to keep him warm. Then he put the other half of the cloak on himself, got it back on his horse and kept riding. At night, when he was asleep, he had a dream. And he dreamt that beggar that was freezing that he helped actually turned and looked at him, and he had the face of Jesus Christ. And a light went off in Martin. So, I understand. Later on, of course, Martin left the army. He later became a bishop. But before that, and while he was a bishop, he spent his life looking after the poor and the vulnerable. Was a really, really inspirational saint for social justice in the early days. And that basis of where he actually could see that actually if he's helping a poor person, he's helping Christ, comes from the Gospels. And I'll read you one passage, and it's very, very important, from the Gospel of St. Matthew. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. And so what that tells us is that when we actually reach out and help someone in need, we are encountering Jesus. And whenever we encounter Jesus like that, we help the person that we're encountering, but then we help ourselves. Because whenever we encounter Jesus, we get grace from that. And we change and we grow in the spiritual life. That's what's so, so important. So the church, throughout its whole existence, it's always been very, very important part of the church to look after the poor and the vulnerable and those that have no one to stick up for them. If you go down the street, you'll see an ambulance go past or an ambulance station, and it's got on the ambulance a red cross. Church started ambulances. Church started hospitals. Even in the hospital, you see a cross on a hospital. And church was the one who started hospitals. These things we don't often think about. When people were hungry or homeless and had nowhere to go, they'd go to the monasteries and the church would look after them. No one else would. There's no one else to do it. The church did all these things. Now governments do it and other organisations do a lot of that, but still there's so many people that slip through the cracks, that are vulnerable and still exploited today. And the church has always said, no, we've got to do something. We've got to make sure that there's justice, that everyone's treated with dignity. Doesn't matter if you're poor, if you're from that country or that race, wherever you are, you have dignity and you are loved and you are important. And we have to make sure that we can be a voice for those that don't have a voice. That is an important part of social justice. So what does that mean for us? It means that whoever we are, wherever we are, and whatever we're doing, we are instruments of Christ, looking for those in the world that need our help and being prepared to go out of our way and help them. It might be in the schoolyard, it might be someone who's been picked on. You can do that. Doesn't matter if you're at school. Whoever you are, you can look out for someone else. And with someone else is out there and you want to look at someone in need, we ask God to help us see the face of Jesus in that person, to have an encounter with Christ. So the more people we can help like that, the greater we become, the holier we become, the more like Christ we become. God bless you.